There was no human rage more genocidal, no human war cries more blood-curdling than when aliens fucked with our adopted people. Chris Bennett ejected a used magazine from his pulse rifle, slamming in a fresh one as the dropship descended through wisps of smoke toward the charred ruins of the Arcturian capital. The 32-year-old ex-Special Forces merc had seen his share of carnage, but nothing like this. Entire city blocks reduced to rubble, corpses of civilians strewn about like broken dolls, all because of the goddamn Kaid and their fucking hive mind. The insectoid bastards had already seized a third of Zephyria in a relentless blitzkrieg, their sheer numbers and perfect coordination overwhelming the Arcturians' superior firepower. Now this crucial homeworld teetered on the brink of collapse, and the Blues had hired the only creatures in the galaxy crazy enough to help them, human mercs. Us. The dropship touched down and the hatch hissed open, revealing a towering figure in the settling dust. Commander Zorax, all 7 feet of cobalt skin, 4 muscular arms, and that unblinking cyclops eye that still unnerved Chris after all these years. Zorax had promised a briefing, but one look said it all. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Zephyria fell, the Kaid would have a staging ground to terrorize half the sector, and if the Arcturians went extinct, that was another sapient species snuffed out by the hive's cancerous expansion. Not on Chris's watch, not while humanity still drew breath. He and his platoon of 30 Blues had to hold the line at a forward base near the front. Billions of lives hung in the balance, but all Chris could think about was getting his hands on those damn bugs and showing them what real war looked like. The Arcturians fought for their homes, but humans. We fought for the fucking sport of it, and the Kaid were about to learn that the hard way. Chris charged into the fray, pulse rifle spitting death as he wove between the ruins. His augmented reflexes kicked into overdrive, allowing him to dodge incoming plasma fire with inhuman agility. He dropped to one knee, sighting down the barrel and unleashing a burst that tore through 3 drones in quick succession. Their chitinous exoskeletons offered no protection against the high-velocity rounds. A drone lunged at him from the side, but Chris was ready. He drew his vibroblade in a flash, the monomolecular edge humming with destructive potential. The blade sliced clean through the drone's outstretched claw and buried itself in the creature's thorax. Ichor sprayed from the wound as Chris wrenched the blade free, the drone collapsing in a twitching heap. All around him, the Arcturians rallied, emboldened by the humans' fearless display. They fought with renewed purpose, their plasma rifles cutting down scores of drones. Chris led the charge, a one-man army that seemed to be everywhere at once. He racked up an impressive kill count, dispatching no fewer than 15 drones single-handedly. With the drones destroyed, Chris and the surviving Arcturians pushed onto the military base. General Xiphus awaited them at the entrance, his battle-scarred visage a mask of skepticism. "So you're the human mercenary," Xiphus growled, his single eye narrowing. "I hope you're as good as they say. We're in for the fight of our lives." Chris met the general's gaze unflinchingly. "I'm better." Inside the base, Chris came face to face with a captured Kaid warrior. The insectoid was a fearsome specimen, all jagged edges and cruel angles. Chris approached the holding cell, addressing the prisoner in flawless Kaid. "Why are you here? What is the hive planning?" The Kaid clicked its mandibles in what might have been a laugh. "Foolish mammal, the hive will consume all. You fight in vain." Chris studied the prisoner intently, picking up on subtle cues in its body language and pheromone output. This was no ordinary drone. It carried itself with an air of authority, exuding a palpable aura of command. A key figure in the Kaid hierarchy, perhaps even a direct conduit to the Queen herself. Before Chris could press further, alarms blared throughout the base. A massive swarm of Kaid warriors was inbound, their numbers blotting out the sun. At the head of the swarm, Chris glimpsed a towering figure, a nightmare given form. The Kaid Queen herself had taken to the field, her 15-foot frame bristling with deadly armaments. Chris's mind raced, formulating a desperate plan. The base was equipped with an experimental EMP cannon designed to disrupt the Keed's hive mind communication. If they could take out the Queen, the rest of the swarm would be thrown into disarray. He hastily coordinated with General Xiphus, positioning Arcturian soldiers and automated turrets at key defensive points. They didn't have long. Already, the thunderous drone of countless wings filled the air, drawing ever closer. Chris hefted his pulse rifle, a fierce grin splitting his face. He lived for moments like this when the odds seemed insurmountable and death a certainty. He charged toward the oncoming swarm, a wordless battle cry tearing from his throat. The Arcturians followed close behind, caught up in the humans' infectious bravado. They met the Keed head-on, pulse fire and plasma bolts filling the air with a symphony of destruction. The acrid stench of scorched chitin and ozone hung heavy in the air as Chris surveyed the aftermath of the battle. Arcturian medics tended to the wounded, while soldiers secured the perimeter and collected the fallen. The once fearsome Kaid Queen lay subdued in a reinforced containment cell, her massive form still twitching from the EMP blast that had short-circuited her mind control device. Chris approached the cell, his pulse rifle at the ready. The Queen's compound eyes tracked his every move, but she made no attempt to resist. Her spirit seemed broken, her will to fight extinguished. In the adjacent cell, Keed sat hunched and defeated. Chris entered the cell, his boots crunching on shattered exoskeleton fragments. He grabbed the insectoid by the throat, slamming it against the wall. "Talk," Chris growled. "The device on your Queen, where did it come from?" Keed chittered weakly, its mandibles clicking in resignation. "The Overseers," it rasped. "They provided the technology, the means to control the hive. We were merely pawns in their game." Chris's grip tightened. "Who are these Overseers? What do they want?" "Power," Keed hissed. "Control. They seek to manipulate the galaxy, to bend it to their will, and they will stop at nothing to achieve their goals." Chris released Keed, his mind racing with the implications. He strode from the cell, seeking out General Xiphus and Commander Zorax. He found them hunched over a holographic display, analyzing the strange device recovered from the Queen. "We have a new enemy," Chris announced, relaying what he had learned from Kaid. "And they are far more dangerous than the Keed could ever be." Xiphus and Zorax exchanged grim looks. They knew all too well the devastation that an unseen puppet master could wreak. "So they must act swiftly," Zorax rumbled. "If these Overseers are indeed behind the Kaid's aggression, they will not take kindly to our interference." Chris nodded. "I'll lead a covert op, a small team in and out before they know what hit them." Xiphus studied the human, his single eye narrowed in calculation. "Very well," he said at last. "Choose your team wisely, human. The fate of the galaxy may depend on your success." Chris wasted no time assembling his squad. Lieutenant Zax, a grizzled veteran with a knack for infiltration, Sergeant Rylock, a tech specialist who could hack any system, and two new recruits, specialists Nixis and Thoros, young but eager to prove themselves. They boarded a sleek stealth shuttle, its matte black hull blending seamlessly with the void of space. Chris inputted the coordinates for a nearby moon. The location of a suspected Overseer outpost gleaned from captured Keed intelligence. The shuttle touched down on the moon's barren surface, kicking up clouds of fine grey dust. Chris and his team disembarked, their weapons at the ready. Ahead, a towering cliff face loomed, its surface pockmarked with craters and scars. Rylock consulted his scanner, frowning. "I'm picking up energy readings from inside the cliff, shielded but definitely artificial." Chris nodded. "That's our target, Nix's Thoros scout ahead. Look for a way in." The two recruits moved forward, their lithe forms disappearing into the shadows. Minutes ticked by, each one an eternity. Then Nixis's voice crackled over the comm. "We've found an entrance, heavily guarded by robotic sentinels, energy shields too." Chris grinned. "Just like old times. Rylock, you're up. Hack those shields and get us inside." They approached the hidden entrance, a seamless portal set into the cliff face. Rylock worked his magic, his fingers flying over his portable terminal. With a flicker, the energy shields disengaged, and the robotic sentinels slumped, deactivated. Chris led the way inside, his pulse rifle sweeping the corridors. The facility was a labyrinth of gleaming metal and pulsing conduits, a far cry from the organic structures of the Kaid. They moved deeper, following the twisting passages, until they emerged into a vast circular chamber. Holographic displays floated in the air, each one depicting a different corner of the galaxy. Chris studied them, his eyes widening in shock. The Overseer's influence was far greater than they had imagined. Civil wars, sabotaged peace treaties, entire species manipulated like chess pieces on a galactic board. "By the stars," Zax breathed. "What have we stumbled into?" Before Chris could respond, a voice echoed through the chamber, cold and imperious. "You have stumbled into your doom, human." A figure emerged from the shadows, clad in sleek black armor. Its face was hidden behind a featureless helmet, but Chris could feel the weight of its gaze, the pressure of its mind against his own. "I am the mastermind," the figure intoned, "and you have meddled in affairs far beyond your comprehension." Armed Overseer agents materialized from hidden alcoves, their weapons trained on Chris and his team. Chris gripped his pulse rifle tighter, his finger hovering over the trigger. The mastermind laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "Your weapons are useless here, human. Surrender and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and you will beg for the release of oblivion." Chris glanced at his team, saw the determination in their eyes. They would fight, even against these impossible odds. They would fight, because that was what humans did. He leveled his rifle at the mastermind, a feral grin splitting his face. "I choose oblivion," he snarled and opened fire. Pulse fire filled the air as Chris and his team battled the Overseer forces. The mastermind lashed out with psionic attacks, the invisible assault tearing at their minds. Specialist Nixis screamed, blood pouring from her eyes and ears as she collapsed, her mind shattered beyond repair. Lieutenant Zax and Sergeant Rylock fought on, their weapons blazing, even as plasma bolts scorched their flesh. They fell back, leaving trails of blood on the cold metal floor. Chris charged the mastermind, vibro blade in hand. They clashed in a whirlwind of strikes and parries evenly matched. The mastermind's armor deflected Chris's slashes, while Chris dodged the Overseer's counterattacks with inhuman speed. As they fought, the mastermind taunted Chris telepathically. "You cannot win, human. We have shaped the destiny of countless worlds. What chance do you have?" Chris gritted his teeth, his rage boiling over. He lunged forward, his blade finding a gap in the mastermind's armor. The Overseer staggered back, dark ichor oozing from the wound. But the mastermind was far from finished. With a thunderous roar, it unleashed a psionic blast that sent Chris flying. He slammed into a wall, his bones shattering on impact. Through a haze of pain, Chris saw the mastermind looming over him, its eyes glowing with malevolent power. It raised a clawed hand, ready to deliver the killing blow. Summoning the last of his strength, Chris drew his pulse pistol and fired point-blank into the mastermind's face. The Overseer reeled back, its helmet shattered, revealing a nightmarish visage of writhing tentacles and pulsating flesh. Chris staggered to his feet, his lifeblood pouring from a dozen wounds. He knew he had only moments left. With a final effort, he stumbled to the facility's central core and activated the self-destruct sequence. Warning klaxons blared as Chris slumped against the console, his vision fading. He watched through dimming eyes as Specialist Thoros dragged the unconscious forms of Zax and Rylock towards the shuttle bay. "Go," Chris whispered into his comm, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "Get out of here, finish the mission." The world tilted sideways as Chris collapsed, his blood pooling on the floor. With the last of his strength, he gazed up at the countdown timer. 10 seconds. 9. 8. The facility shook as explosions ripped through its structure. Fire consumed the Overseer forces, the mastermind's screams echoing through the crumbling halls. Thoros hauled Zax and Rylock aboard the shuttle, his arms straining with the effort. The hatch sealed behind him, and he staggered to the cockpit, his hands shaking as he initiated the launch sequence. The shuttle blasted free of the facility just as the self-destruct reached zero. A blinding flash lit the void as the outpost vanished in a massive fireball. The shockwave slammed into the shuttle, sending it tumbling end over end. Thoros fought with the controls, struggling to stabilize the craft. Slowly, painfully, the shuttle righted itself and limped back towards Zephyria, the bodies of its crew broken and bleeding. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.